The sight of the vessel, a silent leviathan slumbering in its megalithic cradle, had stunned them into a profound silence. It was a monument to a forgotten age, a testament to a power so vast and alien it dwarfed the grandest ambitions of kings and the most potent spells of archmages. It lay there, a blade of pure night against the faint, ambient glow of the cavern, impossibly vast and utterly still. The thousands of crawling lights upon its hull were not stars reflected in obsidian, but the malevolent red censers of the scuttler horde, a living, chittering carpet of metallic guardians. Kalen was the first to tear his gaze away from the impossible vista. The pragmatist in him, the newly minted lord who had inherited nothing but debt and duty, was already calculating the odds. They were abysmal.
"One spare power stone," he said, his voice a low rasp that barely disturbed the reverent hush of the observation chamber.
He patted the small, heavy ebony cube in his satchel, a meager reassurance against the impossible legion before them.
"The weapon in my hands feels lighter. I don't believe I have more than a dozen shots left in this charge." He gestured with his chin towards the cavern, his jaw tight. "We can't fight that. That's not a patrol. That's an army."
Elara, however, was lost. Her face was still pressed against the cool, unyielding green glass, her breath misting its flawless surface. Her mind, a library of ancient histories and forgotten lore, was frantically trying to shelve a book larger than the library itself. The world she knew, a world of gods, magic, and men, had just been revealed as a footnote in a much grander, incomprehensible story.
"Look at the markings on the hull," she breathed, her voice filled with a rapturous awe that grated on Kalen's frayed nerves. "Those spiraling patterns, they echo the celestial serpent constellation, a figure prominent in pre-Kingdom Elven star charts. And the geometry, it's flawless. Not carved, not forged. It seems to be part of the material itself. This isn't a construction, Kalen. It feels grown."
"Ilara," Kalen cut in, his tone sharp as whetted steel. "I don't care if it was hatched from the world egg itself. Those celestial serpents are guarded by 1,000 metal scorpions, and we are trapped in a glass box with them. We need a way out. Now."
His words, blunt and practical, finally pierced her scholarly reverie. She pulled back from the window, a faint flush of embarrassment on her high cheekbones.
"You're right, of course," she conceded, though her eyes kept flicking back to the dormant, majestic ship. "But this changes everything. The ancients, they were not just masters of a different kind of magic. This is something else entirely. A craft without incantation, a power without a soul. A technology." She tasted the unfamiliar word, letting it roll off her tongue as if it were a new spell, foreign and potent.
With the immediate, overwhelming threat forcing them to action, they turned their attention to the chamber itself. It was a simple crescent of metal, devoid of furniture or decoration, save for a single, waist-high pedestal standing in the center. Atop it rested a smooth, black tablet that seemed to drink the ambient light, a perfect void in the dimly lit room. As they approached, the tablet flickered to life without a sound, its surface blooming with a complex web of softly glowing blue lines and points of light.
"Another one of their arcane devices," Kalen grumbled, keeping his lightcaster raised, its ruby-red lens pointed towards the potential threat.
Elara, however, was drawn to it like a moth to a moon petal. "A scrying table," she whispered, her earlier trepidation replaced by academic curiosity. She produced the odd, spoon-shaped artifact from a fold in her robes. "Perhaps it shows us a map of this fortress."
She held the crystal-tipped spoon over the tablet. To Kalen, the glowing display was just a confusing jumble of lights, an abstract pattern with no discernible meaning. But as Elara peered at it through the lens of her diagnostic tool, the chaos resolved into order. The lines became pathways, the lights became nodes of power, and the larger shapes became chambers and halls. It was a schematic, a living blueprint of the very corridors they stood in. She could see their own chamber as a bright, pulsing icon on the map, and the vast cavern with the ship represented as a dark, sprawling shape dominating one side. Hope flared within her as she saw a single, illuminated line that led from their position to a sealed doorway on the far side of the observation room.
There, she said, pointing a slender finger to a symbol on the map that represented the locked door. That is our way forward. But it is sealed. This tablet, it's the lock and the key.
The map was overlaid with several faint constellations, the same ones she had recognized from her ancient charts. One of them, the Celestial Serpent, pulsed with a brighter light than the others. Below it, a series of runes, alien yet somehow familiar in their geometric simplicity, flickered in a repeating sequence.
It's a logic puzzle, she murmured, her elven eyes narrowed in concentration. It wants me to trace a path. A power conduit, perhaps. I must connect the nodes in the sequence of the serpent's stars, from tail to head, following the pattern of the runes.
Can you do it? Kalen asked, his patience wearing perilously thin.
A sharp, scraping sound from the massive window drew his attention. One of the scuttlers had begun to climb the sheer green surface, its razor-sharp legs finding purchase where none should exist, defying gravity itself.
I believe so, Alara replied, her focus absolute. The ancient star charts were the basis for our own, though we interpreted them as divine beings, not as navigational aids.
Her fingers, guided by the esoteric view through her artifact, hovered over the glowing tablet. She began to trace the pattern, her touch causing the lines of light to flare brightly in response. Another scuttler joined the first on the window, and then another, and another. Soon, a dozen of the creatures were crawling across the green expanse, their many-jointed limbs moving with a skittering, unnatural purpose. The rhythmic scritch-scritch-scritch of their metal claws on the unyielding glass set Kalen's teeth on edge. It was like being inside a drum with a legion of metallic spiders trying to claw their way in.
Ilara, I do hope your celestial serpent moves quickly, he said through a clenched jaw, his knuckles white around the grip of the lightcaster.
Patience, Kalen. This is delicate work. One wrong connection and the entire sequence could reset, or worse.
Her finger danced across the tablet, a blur of motion connecting point after luminous point. She drew the final line, connecting it to the cluster of stars that formed the head of the serpent. For a heart-stopping second, nothing happened. The scuttlers on the glass seemed to pause, their red sensor eyes fixated on the two figures within. Then, the entire tablet flashed once with a brilliant azure light, and a deep, resonant chime echoed through the chamber, vibrating in their bones. With a whisper of displaced air, a section of the wall opposite the window slid silently sideways, revealing a dark, narrow corridor.
Don't have to tell me twice, Kalen said, already moving towards the opening, not daring to look back.
They scrambled through the gap just as the first scuttler managed to reach the top of the window frame and begin crawling onto the ceiling of the observation deck. The door slid shut behind them with the same unnerving silence, cutting off the maddening sound of scraping claws and plunging them into absolute darkness. Ilara instantly raised her staff. Its crystal had blossomed with light, bathing the new corridor in a warm, familiar glow that was a profound comfort after the cold, alien blues and reds. This passage was different from the last. It was smaller, the walls a lighter shade of gray, and the air lacked the cold, sterile scent of the main concourses. It felt more like a service tunnel, or perhaps, living quarters. They proceeded with caution, Kalen in the lead, sweeping the light caster from side to side. They soon found a small side chamber, its door hanging slightly ajar. Pushing it open, they found what looked like a locker room. Several tall, metal cabinets lined one wall, most of them dented and scarred by the passage of millennia. One, however, stood pristine, its surface marked with a simple, glowing blue line.
A sealed chest, Kalen noted, his adventuring instincts taking over. It had no visible lock, no handle, no hinges.
Ilara examined the blue line. It's another energy signature. I think. She reached out and placed the palm of her hand flat against the line.
It pulsed warmly in response to her touch, a silent communion between flesh and machine. With another soft chime, the locker door hissed open. The contents were neatly arranged, perfectly preserved and untouched by time. There were 3 more of the restorative vials, their strange fluid shimmering within. Elara quickly secured them in her satchel. Beside them lay 2 objects of far greater interest. The first was a sphere of polished black crystal, about the size of Kalen's fist. He picked it up. It was cool and smooth to the touch, seemingly inert. But as his fingers closed around it, it came to life. The crystal became transparent, and through it, the room appeared bathed in a ghostly green light. He could see the faint glow of the power conduits hidden within the walls, the warmth of Elara's body as a shimmering aura, and the corridor outside in perfect, illuminated detail. He could see the very essence of things.
An orb of true sight, Elara breathed, peering at it with wide eyes. It allows you to see the world's hidden energies, the flows of magic, the life force of living things. An Archscryer's tool of unimaginable power.
It lets me see in the dark and through walls. That's good enough for me.
The second item was a small, silver bracer, intricately designed with the same geometric patterns as the walls. Elara picked it up. It felt light, almost weightless. As she clasped it around her slender wrist, it hummed softly and a faint, hexagonal pattern of light shimmered across her robes for a moment before vanishing.
What was that? Kalen asked, lowering the orb.
Elara held her hand out, concentrating. The shimmering, translucent field of energy reappeared, encapsulating her in a faint blue glow that warped the air around her.
A ward, she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. A shield of pure force. I can feel it, a barrier between me and the world. It's like the strongest Aegis spell, but it requires no concentration, no mana.
She lowered her hand, and the field vanished again, though she could feel its potential coiled around her wrist, a silent and tireless guardian. As they stood there, absorbing the implications of their new discoveries, a new sound reached them from further down the main corridor. It was not the high-pitched chittering of the scuttlers. This was a deeper, more resonant sound. A low, rhythmic hum, punctuated by the heavy, deliberate fall of metallic feet. Asterisk thump. Clank. Thump. Clank. Asterisk. The sound was methodical, unhurried, radiating a sense of immense weight and inexorable power. It was the sound of something that had no need for stealth, something that knew its own dominion over these silent halls. Kalen's head snapped up. He moved to the doorway of the locker room, peering into the oppressive darkness of the corridor. He raised the new black orb to his eye. Through its lens, the hallway resolved into a grid of green lines and shadows. And at the far end, turning a corner and proceeding towards them with a steady, implacable gait, was a figure. It was large, easily twice his height, and bipedal. Its form was a massive silhouette of shimmering heat and crackling energy, a walking furnace encased in thick, angular armor. It carried no weapon he could discern. Its thick, powerful arms, ending in what looked like crushing pistons, seemed to be weapons enough. The heavy, rhythmic footsteps grew louder, echoing in the confined space, each impact a hammer blow announcing the arrival of a true warden of this ancient place. Kalen lowered the orb, his face a grim mask in the dim light of Elara's staff.
Elara, he said, his voice low and tight with a tension he had not felt even when crossing the Bridge of Light. The guardians of this tomb, they're getting bigger.